Well, good afternoon everyone and welcome. Welcome to our webinar on staying ahead of the curve with your Dynamics GP solution. And today is about the new release of Dynamics GP, the 2016 release. Officially released at the beginning of May, and today we'd like to just take you through some of the new features that we've handpicked, as well as just have a discussion on some of the things that we'd like to cover from previous releases. We recognise that not everyone is on the most recent release, so we want to cover off a few of those things for you as well. So my name's Michael, and I'll host the session today, and I also have Robert Giannini with me, who will be presenting some of the key features that we've picked out to show you today. So before we get started, I just want to mention two quick points. One is we are going to be able to answer your questions during the session. So although this is a webinar and not an interactive webinar, on the right-hand side of your GoToMeeting panel, you can actually type in a question for us, and we'll allow some time at the very end of the session to answer those questions. So if you have a question, please type it in, and we'll get to it at the end of the session. And secondly, we are definitely recording this session for you today. So that means that while you're certainly able to take as many notes as you like, you don't have to copy everything down. We'll record the session and we'll send that to you in a link that you'll be able to follow through to our YouTube channel at the end of today's session. So those that attend will get a copy of the recording. You'll also then be able to share that with anyone else in your organisation, share that link around to that recording for someone that wasn't able to attend today. So our agenda today, we have a number of things that we actually want to go through for you. Firstly, it's just a quick look at that Dynamics GP roadmap. We'll then go into the what's new section, so specifically focus on product, what's come out and what's new in 2016, and a little bit about 2015 R2 as well, and I'll explain that in the roadmap piece. We have a rather dramatic note there on deprecated features, and I'll save that until we get to that piece. And then we have just a couple of considerations I want to make sure that you're aware of around licensing and platform from a readiness perspective. And then just finally, what do we do next? What's the next step? So on that, I want to start off straight away now, and let's just have a look at that roadmap for Dynamics GP. Now, we've got here, right now, we're at the 2016 H1, so third piece from the right there, GP 2016, launched officially in May of this year. So there's a couple of things I just want to mention there. One is Microsoft are already adding features and planning the future for GP 2016 with an R2 release coming later in this year. They're also adding features and planning for a release for GP 2017. So the future for GP is already planned out from a Microsoft perspective, and timing in terms of release is already planned. But we've also just noted here that we understand and recognise that not every client is on the most recent version, and coming maybe from a few versions behind. 2010 and 2013 are reasonably common versions in terms of where clients are right now. So we just wanted to note here that when upgrading to GP 2016, you'll be able to take advantage of what was released all the way from your current. So the 2013 release and 2013 R2, as well as 2015 and 2015 R2. Now, specifically with 2015 R2, there's a few things that today Rob's going to show us within 2015 R2, because our last formal session was around the 2015 release. So there's a couple of features that they cross over between 2015 R2 and 2016. But the key message here is just aware that all those features are hold true in 2016. So taking advantage of an upgrade now on GP 2016 rolls in all features. As an example, the workflow piece has been something that's been initiated in 2013 and then continually enhanced through 2013 R2 and 15 R2. all the way to where we are today in 2016. So good news in terms of upgrading, in terms of those features will get available, as well as good news from a future perspective with a roadmap already planned from Microsoft on GP 2016. So on that, I'd like to hand over to Rob. Rob will actually take us through some of the features that he's picked out and present within the GP application. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm going to take you through the items that we've picked for the What's New section here. Obviously, there's a lot more What's New than what I have on the screen here on this slide. But these are the ones that we've handpicked to sort of show you today and give you a bit of an insight to the product, because obviously we could go through all of them in 45 minutes in the tight time frame we have. So we've just handpicked these, and we've picked ones that obviously we are going to be most appealing to the wider audience. So with that, I'm not going to harp on the slide too long, so I'm going to just switch over to my version of Dynamics GP that I have running in the background here. Well, that's interesting. And get stuck straight into it. So first and foremost, because you guys hopefully are all existing users, you should notice something slightly different on my homepage here, and you'll see that first and foremost that on my homepage I now have this Power BI piece which has been added to one of the options on my homepage. So what's that about? Is basically I can now develop reports using the Power BI tool. Previously you'll notice that if I have a look at my top customer balances and my top vendors by year to date snippets on my homepage here, they were developed in the SSRS, or the SQL Reporting Services reporting tool, which is quite a technical tool, whereas Power BI is a lot more user-friendly and a lot easier to develop the BI style reports. And what they've added in this release in 2016 is the ability to render those reports directly on a user's homepage. And of course, a user can interact with these reports directly from their homepage. So when they click on the actual BI report, they'll take them directly to the BI report. So when I click on that report, it'll take me straight to the Power BI dashboard that I have rendered here. You'll notice that that total revenue piece is just one of many different BI pieces that I have here on this one report. And this one report, of course, I can interact with all this information on this report. So this is just Power BI in itself, in plain vanilla Power BI, which ships as part of your Office 365 offering, yeah, right alongside your Word and your Excel and all those other wonderful tools that we have from Microsoft. Power BI is just another piece of that puzzle nowadays. So if you're looking for a great reporting tool and a great way to render the style of report to an end user, I would definitely recommend it. Just to give you a little bit of an insight of Power BI and its capabilities, I'll just draw down on, say, a particular report here in Power BI, my customer profitability report, just to show you the sort of interactivity that an end user has here. You can see that as an end user, I can click on, in this case here, I've got a couple of different executives or employees in the organization, and I can click on each one of those, and as I do, you'll notice that the information in the adjoining charts are all linked and are being updated for that filter or that selection that I've made. But I've got the same sort of click down and drill down capability on the charts themselves. So I can click on this case here, I've clicked on the bar chart, and you'll see that all the information and all the other charts are filtering based on the selections that I've made. So it's a very nice way to interact with the data and reports. Very cool to use, very easy to use, and uptake has been tremendous from existing users so far. So that's a little bit about the Power BI capabilities, but that's not really what all this is about. But the ability to obviously render that on the home pages is a very nice new feature. All right, so that's a bit about in your face there. Now we'll move on to some of the more new features, the interesting features within the system, and I'll start off with first and foremost in the GL area. For the people who weren't aware, but there was a feature added for the ability to copy and paste from Excel into a journal. So let's say, for example, I have a journal which I prepare in Excel. I'm just going to go back to my desktop here. I'm going to open up my Excel spreadsheet here called electricity accrual, and you'll see here I have, for argument's sake, a couple of lines which I've prepared in Excel that I now want to transpose into a journal within Dynamics GP. I can just quite simply there select the selection, right-click, say copy, switch over to Dynamics GP, open up my GL transaction entry screen, and then when I do, you'll notice at the top of the screen that there's a Excel paste button, and then when I click on the Excel paste button, you'll see that it basically pastes those two lines directly from Excel, in my example here, straight into Dynamics GP in the journal entry screen. And keeping note that the entire description that I've typed in my Excel spreadsheet is transposed in there. So that's a nice new feature, and all the accountants have loved that. All right, so that's one of them. The other area is, I'll delete that. The other area is if we look at, I won't look at that. If I just look at I'll open up a simple GL account, and you'll notice that at the moment down the bottom here, there's a lot more buttons in your older versions, because we used to have a summary and a historical summary button, whereas if I just go into the summary inquiry screen now, you'll see here that what they've done is they've combined both the open and historical summary views into the one screen. So I don't have to be concerned, I no longer have to remember which year is, or the year that I'm inquiring, is it an open or historical year. Then I can just come in here, select the year I want to view. You'll notice that it automatically, in my case here 2012 is a historical year, obviously it displays the historical, and if 2017 in my case is an open year, it displays the open year, without having to chop and change between screens. And the same sort of thing is if I'm drilling down into the detailed inquiry screen. So they've combined the two summary inquiries into the one, so I don't have to change between the two screens. So that's a little bit around the GL functionality. If I go back to a company level, what's new at a company level, I should say, what I want to touch on is just quickly some of the functionality around document attachments. So for anyone out there who's currently using any sort of document attachment, and when I talk about document attachments, I'm talking about when we have a look at, say for example here, when I look at a customer, in this case here Aaron Fitz Electrical, and I look at the little note attachment here, if I'm using this little paperclip here to put a document attachments at the moment, what we call the old OLE notes functionality, that's now been migrated to this new notes attachment area, and you'll notice that when I click on my one, the screen looks dramatically different to the OLE attachment feature. How does that all come into play? Well, that all comes into play with, if I look at, say for example, I'll come into an inventory item now, the same sort of thing, I'll call up an inventory item, and if I look at the top of my my button pane across the top here, my ribbon, sorry, you'll see that my attachment button is showing that there is an attachment for this item. Why? How do I know that? It's because obviously visually you can see that the paperclip has got a little piece of paper under it. I'm sure we're familiar with that as a user. And you'll see that I've attached a JPEG image here. If I just preview that, a JPEG image there is a nice little Ferrari. That's basically what I'm hoping to work my way towards purchasing over the next 10 years of my life before I retire. Okay, so I've attached a JPEG image, so that can be a JPEG, a PDF, any sort of document. I've attached that at the item level, yeah? So here I've got an inventory item. What does that all mean with attachment functionality? If I now go into, say for example, a sales order, and I do a typical sales order entry, you'll see here when I go into my sales order entry, I'll save that and I'll create a new one actually, and we'll say Aaron Fitz, and I'll just get down to my line items here, and I'll say the 100 XLG, and I'll just add that. Okay. So I've added that line item to a sales order, and you can see that that line item, once again, even on the sales order entry screen, is showing me that there's an attachment there. But what's really nice about this attachment feature now is I can come in here and I can say, hey, I want to include any attachments along for those inventory items that are on this invoice. I want to include them along with the email or the invoice that I send to the client when I send it to them. So how do I do that? I come into the actions area here, and I can say I want to select which attachments go out to the client. And in this case here, it's showing that line 1 on my sales order has an attachment present. Do I want to include it? I tick that and say yes. and then I just say OK. Now, when I go to email this invoice to the client, yeah, and I just use a standard invoice, send out as an email, nothing too exciting there, and I'll hit the send email. Now that'll go away and send that invoice as an email. In my case, it's going to be a PDF. Off it goes, and hopefully if I just switch over to my Outlook here, I should get an email. There we go. There's Charlie here. So Charlie now gets an email. So pretend we're the customer now. There it is. I can see the PDF being a copy of the invoice for that phone. But also you will have noticed, if I go back to the email, that also that attachment that I had on the item has come through and included there. So that could have been specifications for that particular inventory item, yeah, specifications, details, etc., brochure, or whatever it may be. So because of that attachment feature, what we're getting at here is because of that attachment feature, we now have this ability to pull those attachments and include those as part of the working documents that go out to a client. Or on the other side of the ledger, the same functionality I've demonstrated there, you can definitely use if you're doing the same sort of functionality on the purchase side of the ledger. So in other words, when I'm sending out a purchase order, I can include any attachments for items there. All right, so that's a bit of the attachment feature. The next area I want to get into, I'm just going to go back into GP, is around purchasing. For those who are on earlier versions, back in 2013, requisitions was moved into Dynamics GP out of the old business portal. So what I want to run through now is just show you demonstrate some of the workflow functionality and the purchase requisition functionality that's available in Dynamics GP now as of 2016. So I'm going to go into, well, in fact, no, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do it in GP. I'm going to switch over and show you the new web client and what it looks like. So I'm going to open up Google Chrome here. I've got Google Chrome installed here, and the new web client is, I'm just logging on here. The new web client is available and can run you can see here I'm running it in Google Chrome, but it's available to run on all browsers now, because the big change is that it's now HTML5, being written in HTML5. And what does that mean to the end user? Basically, I can access it from, Safari being an Apple browser, or Google Chrome in this case here being an Android device. So basically, it's available on all devices now. So I can access Dynamics GP using the web client from any device. Okay, so I've logged on here, and I've logged on as a different user. I'm just going to make my requisition area large, and you can see here that the look and feel of the web client looks exactly like the desktop client for all intensive purposes, with some nice features where I've got a search feature here where I can search for a particular function within the ERP system. So you notice I type in customer there, and it's showing me all the different customer functions or reports that are available to me. So that's a function of the search feature. Or I can even collapse on the left-hand side here. When I collapse the navigation pane, you'll notice that I'm now left with what we call the hamburger button, 3-line button here. And when I click on that, I can use that as a quick navigation tool without having to open up the whole left-hand side navigation menu. Anyway, that's back to entering a requisition. So I'm going to enter a requisition as a user Harry Hardhat here in this case here. I'm going to say enter purchase requisition, and I'm going to use the web client to demonstrate some of that functionality. So yes, the screens all look exactly the same as they do in GP, so we're not having to retrain on a different screen or a different layout. It's basically just the Dynamics GP windows being rendered in the web client. What are we going to do? We're going to purchase that Ferrari that that I really want to buy. So I'm going to say purchase new Ferrari. All my typing here. So I come down here. Obviously, there's a description field there. We can set the ship to address and all that information if we want. But the other big feature that's been released here in 2016 in particular, like I said, requisitions were moved into GP as of 2013, but in 2016 what they've done here is they've added the ability to raise a requisition for a project if you're using the project module within Dynamics GP. not going to do that, so I'm just going to say new car, and I want one of those, and it's a 450,000. Oops, that's the wrong. That's the description. So new Ferrari 458, and it's $450,000. Okay. I can, because this is a requisition, of course, I don't have to populate the site ID or the creditor ID fields. I can just leave that for the central purchasing officer or whoever it is that's going to convert this to a purchase order. What I am going to do though is I'm going to use the attach feature again. So at the top of the screen here, I'm going to use the attach feature to attach. Let's save that. I want to attach that picture of that vehicle, but I mean I could attach a quote. In this case, it could be a quote. It could be a, there's a picture of my Ferrari. It could be a quote that I've received from the supplier, or once again a specification document that I want to include on this, so that when I route this now for approval via workflow, I want the person who receives the workflow approval email to see this particular attachment. So I'm going to say OK here, hit the submit button, and send it off on its way to be approved. So I'm going to say, please approve before the weekend. Hit the submit button, and off it goes. So what's happening in the background, obviously the workflow is going to have been pre-configured within the system to route that particular requisition based on rules that I've configured in the system. Those rules can be as complex or as convoluted as you need them to be, but what you'll notice is I've received an email now as the approver of that particular requisition. I've received an email, and that email says, up top here, sorry, email here. Hopefully you can everyone see that okay. So I'll open that right up. So here's the email. That email has information to say, hey, you've been assigned requisition, etc., to be approved. I'll just scroll this down a bit so you can actually see it. And it gives me a requisition number. It gives me an approve, reject, and delegate hyperlinks, and also the details, the line details of what was on that requisition. But first and foremost, right at the top here as an attachment is that attachment that I attached to the requisition. So that is flowing through. Like I said, now if that was a copy of a quote or something from the supplier, then that would be included. If I look at the requisition number that appears here, you'll notice it appears as a link. Why does it appear as a link? Because if I am a user of Dynamics GP, I can click on that link, and you'll notice that when I switch over to Dynamics GP, it's opened up that requisition within the application for me. Of course, if I'm not a user of Dynamics GP and I click on that link, then it's obviously not going to take me anywhere. All right, final step. I just want to quickly approve that. So I'm going to click on the link to approve, and you'll see that to be able to approve this particular requisition, I don't need to be a user. I don't need to log into Dynamics GP. All I need is web access. In this case here, it's just opened it up in Internet Explorer for me. Okay to go. So as the approver, I hit the approve button there, put in my comments, and that has been approved. And what I want to demonstrate there is that I've obviously approved that without even going near the application itself. So if we open that up now, what has that done within GP? There's that requisition. Have a look at the workflow history here, and we can see all the steps, the users who created that particular step, who's approved that step, the time and date stamp, and any commentary that they've entered is all in there. So now what I've demonstrated is the workflow functionality, the document attachment functionality, and the requisition functionality that is all relatively new and coming from 2013. So what I'll quickly do is I'll quickly switch back, and what I want to touch on here, so just on the workflow, just to talk a bit about workflow, because there's such a large area that's sort of continually growing, is in 2013 R2 was the initial release of workflow functionality. In 2015 they expanded that with all these workflows here, and then in 2015 R2 they added the AP invoice approval in workflow and that document attachment functionality, which I've showed you there. Which can now be included as the workflow. And in particular in 2016, they've elaborated on some of the functionality that can be used, or the conditions that can be used when setting up those workflows. All right, a couple of little other things that I'm going to quickly touch on. If I just go back into GP, in 2016 they've added, if people are familiar with the all-in-one viewers, so the all-in-one viewers that were introduced in 2013, the first one that was introduced was the purchasing all-in-one viewer. This was basically where we can come into this screen here, select a supplier. Once we select that supplier, it will return all the purchase orders, all the purchase order receipts, all the invoices that we've processed, and all the payments that we've processed for that supplier. But what's really nice about this screen here is I can obviously click on any of those hyperlinks to drill down into the source document. But what's really nice, I can click on any of the documents, the checkbox here, and the system will actually filter all the other documents to show me any. Why is that not showing? So it shows me, in this case here, I've selected PO 2076, and it shows me any receipts for that purchase order, any invoices that were processed against those receipts, and any payments that were invoiced that were processed for any of those invoices. So that was the purchase all-in-one viewer. What they've done in 2016 is they've released the sales all-in-one viewer, which is similar sort of functionality, just on the other side of the ledger now. So we can put in any customer we like here, select a customer, and it shows quotes, sales orders, invoices, cash receipts and returns, and the same sort of functionality where I select a document and it will filter the other documents based on that selection. And the same again with the inventory all-in-one viewer, which is again all new in 2016. So we can select an inventory item, and once we select that inventory item, the all-in-one viewer will show us the quantities in, so whenever that item has been purchased or received into stock, any movements within stock, and any sales of that item will be shown in the quantity out area there. So that's the all-in-one viewers, which are fairly new, or all new, added in the GP 2016. There is a couple other quick things I'm going to touch on in Management Reporter, and then we'll move on to some of the other bits and pieces. So in Management Reporter, I've got a quick report open here, and hopefully some people out there are already using that. If you're not, Management Reporter is just basically a replacement for FRX for those who are still using FRX. But with Management Reporter, just want to touch on what's new in Management Reporter. So there has been a couple of little improvements. First and foremost, and most notably on the screen here, when I'm viewing a report, you'll notice that I can now search within the report for a particular account or field or whatever appears in the report, or a number. But the real nice ones are, I've now got the ability as a user or a consumer of this report, I can click on the report options down here, and I can actually run this report, you can see here, for different months or for different years, yeah? So I can select a different month or a different year to run this report for. Okay? The other one is, well, I will add that functionality, of course, if you're using the full Management Report viewer, then obviously that functionality was always there. It was never there and available to a user who's viewing the report just using the web viewer. The other one is the previous reports, the ability to jump to previous reports. If you're familiar with Management Reporter and FRX, obviously every time you run a report, it creates an instance of that report. And the only way to get to those previous instances was to use the full viewer. But now with the web viewer, I can come down here and say View Previous Reports, and I can see down on the left here now it's gone and opened up a pane where I can access any previous instance of that management report that was run. Yeah? Great. Okay. So that is sort of a whirlwind look at all the new features that have been added in 2015 R2 and 2016 and the latest version of Management Reporter. So what I'll do is I'll switch back to here and hand back over to Michael so he can take us through a couple of the other areas.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Just getting some feedback there. You might want to mute your phone for a second. Just as I mentioned earlier in the agenda, this dramatic reference to deprecated features and the big discontinued stamp there on the page. So the solution here is the Forecaster piece. So Microsoft Forecaster, It is something that we have been aware of and have seen coming for a little while. Microsoft has now officially confirmed the notification that it is discontinued. As I mentioned, we have been aware of this or coming for a while, so haven't actually been promoting the Forecaster solution for new implementations, but there are clients that have previously been taking advantage of the licensing that was bundled into your Dynamics GP piece. You are still able to use it as it is at the moment, of course, but here is the official notice that it is discontinued. The obvious question is, what does that mean? It firstly only affects those organisations or existing clients that are using Forecaster. It doesn't affect anyone that that is a new site because you just don't have access to it. But the key piece here is, if you are using Forecaster, talk to your account manager and we'll let you know the details about the licensing implications for you and some options in terms of alternatives that we do provide here at PA. So while it does sound quite dramatic, we recently did our seminar session around Australia, and in the audience that attended there weren't any users, so it does only affect a very minor group within the GP community, based on the fact that we saw this coming. So the other piece just around licensing here is more of a good story, more of some good news from a Microsoft perspective, and we just wanted to make you aware that Microsoft, from a user perspective, have added different user types of licensing. Previously, there was the only one type of user, and that was a full access user. Microsoft still has the full access user, and in the 2016 license model and license pricing, the full access user is $3,000, and that price effectively applies to all clients now. The full access user is still a concurrent user, so really nothing changes at that level. The limited user is also a concurrent user, and that's $600. And here we've just got, as it kind of suggests, limited functionality available for a much more reasonable price. But the third one that I just wanted to note specifically here is the self-serve user, which is only $60, and that is a named user. So different from the first two, full access and limited are concurrent. The self-serve is a named user, but it is only $60. And that was brought in by Microsoft, understanding that things like the requisitioning functionality that Rob showed us earlier is something that you don't want your entire organisation to have full access to GP in order to avail themselves of that functionality. So the self-serve user was introduced. So the good news is that Microsoft has acknowledged that different users within your organisation will have different needs within the application, so they've catered for that with those three user types. In talking to your account manager about your upgrade, the key is just to let us help you solve that user type problem for you, and let us know what your users do and what your user requirements are, and we can help from a licensing perspective when you're purchasing additional users to make sure you're licensed properly and taking advantage of those different license types that are now available. So just moving on then in terms of considerations.
Okay, I'll talk through this one. We wanted to just basically highlight the fact that if you are coming from older versions of Dynamics GP, just to be mindful that obviously we can upgrade from any version, but obviously the further back we go, the upgrade process just becomes a little bit more technical. So for example, if we're coming from GP10 to GP 2016, the upgrade process does require sort of an interim step, and that is that we obviously, for example, in GP10 there we need to upgrade the data to GP 2013 before we can upgrade it to 2016. What does that mean to you as an end user or as a client? Doesn't really mean much other than it's going to take a little bit to upgrade. It doesn't mean that you have to do 2 upgrades. It is still the 1 upgrade, but it just means that the time taken to complete the upgrade, the technical upgrade, the upgrading of the databases, is going to take you slightly longer depending on how old a version you're actually currently running. So therefore, just be mindful of that. That yeah, the longer we let it go, then obviously the more time it's going to take to actually complete that upgrade. What's going on here? Okay, over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Rob. So, in terms of upgrading, Rob's obviously... Sorry, you just have to mute your phone there, Rob. In terms of upgrading, Rob's shown us the functionality available with GP 2016, but also touched on some of the things that are available in previous releases in terms of 2015 and 2015 R2. So that covers the GP element of an upgrade, but there's more to consider than just the GP application, and particularly with regard to the platform. We just wanted to make sure that people are aware that you need to upgrade your environment to be compatible with GP 2016, which is a common reality in terms of licensing and software. But specifically, there are some things that are no longer supported with the 2016 release. So older versions of Windows, XP, Server 2003, older versions of Office, so particularly 2007, and just down the bottom there's 2010, so 2010, Internet Explorer, older version, and SQL, the server version 2008. So in order to not only take advantage of some of the new features in terms of that integration that Rob showed with emailing and approval from emails, that workflow piece, not only do we need to be using current versions of other Microsoft technology, but there is a compatibility reality there with the platform and the SQL version that you're running. So again, as part of our upgrade process, what we would do with you and in conjunction with you is firstly make sure that you're aware of the other considerations outside of just the GP application. But secondly, we'll actually go through that and work through that from an IT perspective with you as part of our upgrade audit process, making sure that the other elements of your platform and your environment are compatible and able to be used with the GP solution. So again, just a consideration here for you as part of the upgrade process. Thanks, Rob. So finally, what we've shown you today is the application from a GP perspective. We've touched on some of the considerations around readiness and preparation, things to be aware of when upgrading. But we just wanted to finish off by letting you know that these are the things that we will help you with. So if you are ready, if you are interested, if you would like to discuss your upgrade plans, please contact your account manager, and the account manager will then take you through the next step. The next step, once you've engaged in that conversation, is to go through the upgrade audit process, and it's at that time that we dig deep into the platform considerations, the functionality that you'd like to take advantage of, and plan out an upgrade for you, making sure we're clear on which elements of the upgrade you'd like to get involved with and which of the work that you'd like us to do. And then we manage that program of work with you. So contact your account manager is certainly the best next step. So on that note, I'd just like to say, firstly, thank you to Rob, but then open the floor for questions. As I mentioned right at the beginning, if you do have a question, please type it into the go-to panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Just go to the questions section, and you can type your question in there, and we'll answer them as we go. We have got a question that's already come through there, Rob. So we'll just answer that question and allow time there for other people to write their questions in. So the first question is just a short one. How long does an upgrade take?
Well, That's quite an interesting one, because I mean we get asked that all the time. Well, an upgrade will depend on obviously the complexity of the site, the modules, the third-party add-ons. So there actually is no answer for that question. There is no answer. It will all depend on the site, and that's part of the idea of the upgrade audit. So once we do the upgrade audit, we'll be able to get back to you and give you an exact timing on exactly how that will take. But an upgrade, to give you a bit of a guide, an upgrade could be anything from 1 month through to 12 weeks, all depending on the amount of time that you want to spend on the big factor really with upgrades is really the amount of time that the customer wants to spend what we say UAT or testing the new version.
Okay, thank you. No standard answer, as you said. So just there is another question come through. I can probably take this one, Rob. The question is, are there any licensing costs to upgrade? So just to answer that one, as part of your support plus, there's an element of maintenance with the vendor and support from PA. So the maintenance then gives you access and enables you to take advantage of the upgraded licenses and upgrade to your software. So there's no license costs associated with upgrading. It's a engagement. Okay, Rob, we've got a more technical question here for you now. Does the Excel paste for financial journals allow for intercompany entries?
Yeah, that question was asked by other users as well. Interesting one. No, it doesn't. At this stage, there's not support for intercompany entries. So when you are copying and pasting from Excel, copying and pasting from with Excel into the GL transaction entry screen, it does not allow for the intercompany entry or intercompany code to be entered as part of the paste.
Okay, thank you. And just one more here. Is Power BI an add-on or part of the core package?
Yeah, I can answer that. But Power BI, as I mentioned in the presentation, is actually part of your Office 365. So Power BI, the reports and writing the reports is all done within Power BI, which is all part of the Office 365 package, or like I said, alongside with Word and Excel and so forth. Just another sort of application in that area, and all that Dynamics GP is doing is picking up those reports that have been written in Power BI and rendering those on your home page.
Okay, thank you. And another question now, interesting, on the copy-paste feature. So does copy and paste work for the purchasing module?
I'm sorry, but no. Copy-paste at this stage is only being enabled for the GL transaction entry screen, though I will add that there is a third-party application that does do copy and paste into some of the purchasing screens and some of the sales screens.
All right, thanks, Rob. So in terms of that particular question there, we're happy to follow up with the individual that answered that question, or if that is something that interests anyone, just let your account manager know, and we can help anyone with that. Okay, it is exactly 1:15. Rob, we've finished right on time. So again, I'd just like to say thanks to Rob for presenting us, as he mentioned, a little bit of a whirlwind tour there on new features available in 2016. As you exit the session today, you have an opportunity there to just answer a few questions, one of which would be if you're interested in having us reach out to you and discuss your upgrade straight away, please let us know. And just finally, thank you for attending today. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to talking to you soon, if we're not already, about upgrading your GP application to 2016. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.